John F. Kennedy's presidency coincided with a pivotal period in the history of Israel's nuclear program. The young nation, still grappling with the scars of the Holocaust and facing existential threats from its neighbors, saw nuclear weapons as the ultimate guarantee of its survival. This ambition, however, put Israel on a collision course with the United States, a country that had emerged from the Second World War as a staunch advocate for nuclear non-proliferation. Kennedy, deeply aware of the devastating consequences of nuclear war, was determined to prevent the spread of these weapons, particularly in volatile regions like the Middle East. His administration viewed Israel's clandestine nuclear program with growing suspicion and concern. This tension formed the backdrop of a complex and often strained relationship between the young American president and the fledgling state of Israel. Kennedy's commitment to nuclear non-proliferation was not merely a matter of policy, it was a deeply held personal conviction. He had witnessed firsthand the horrors of conventional warfare and understood the existential threat posed by atomic weapons. His famous peace speech at American University in 1963, delivered just months before his assassination, eloquently articulated his vision of a world free from the threat of nuclear annihilation. This vision, however, was increasingly at odds with Israel's aggressive pursuit of nuclear weapons. Israel's relentless drive for nuclear capability not only defied international norms, but also jeopardized regional stability and strained its relationship with the United States. At the heart of the Kennedy administration's unease with Israel lay a top-secret facility in the Negev desert, Dimona. This seemingly innocuous complex, shrouded in secrecy and heavily guarded, was believed to house Israel's clandestine nuclear weapons program. American intelligence reports pointed towards suspicious activities at Dimona, fueling Kennedy's anxieties about Israel's true intentions. The construction of Dimona, facilitated by French assistance in the late 1950s, had raised alarm bells in Washington from the outset. However, Israel, determined to maintain its nuclear ambiguity, consistently denied any weapons program, insisting that Dimona was merely a textile factory. This explanation, however, failed to convince the Kennedy administration, which continued to view Dimona with deep suspicion. Kennedy's concerns were not unfounded. Israel, facing an existential threat from its Arab neighbors, saw nuclear weapons as the ultimate deterrent, a guarantee of its survival in a hostile region. The memory of the Holocaust, still fresh in the minds of many Israelis, fueled a deep-seated fear of annihilation, a fear that only nuclear weapons could assuage. Driven by this fear and the desire for self-preservation, Israel pressed ahead with its nuclear program, much to the dismay of the Kennedy administration. The stage was set for a diplomatic showdown, a confrontation between two allies with diverging views on the most pressing issue of the day, the proliferation of nuclear weapons. As evidence of Israel's nuclear ambitions mounted, President Kennedy found himself increasingly at odds with Israeli Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion. Kennedy, committed to preventing nuclear proliferation, applied pressure on Israel to open up the Dimona facility for international inspections. These inspections, he believed, were crucial to verifying Israel's claims of peaceful nuclear research and allaying international concerns. The relationship between the two leaders, once characterized by mutual respect and understanding, began to deteriorate. Ben-Gurion, a staunch nationalist determined to secure Israel's survival at all costs, viewed Kennedy's demands for inspections as an infringement on Israeli sovereignty. He argued that Israel, facing existential threats from its neighbors, had the right to defend itself by any means necessary. Despite mounting pressure from Washington, Israel remained defiant, refusing to allow unfettered access to Dimona. Ben-Gurion, a shrewd and experienced statesman, skillfully exploited the Cold War rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union to his advantage. He argued that a nuclear-armed Israel would serve as a bulwark against Soviet influence in the Middle East, effectively making Israel a strategic asset to the West. This argument, while compelling, failed to sway Kennedy, who remained deeply troubled by Israel's nuclear ambitions. The impasse over Dimona cast a long shadow over U.S.-Israeli relations, sowing the seeds of mistrust that would linger for decades to come. Adding another layer of complexity to the already strained relationship between Kennedy and Israel is the controversial demand that Israel register as a foreign agent in the United States. This demand, often cited as a significant point of contention, suggests that Kennedy was taking a hard-line stance against Israeli influence in American politics. The exact nature of this demand remains unclear. Some sources suggest that Kennedy was concerned about the activities of the American Zionist Council, a pro-Israel lobbying group, and sought to curtail its influence by forcing it to register as a foreign agent. Others posit that Kennedy was more broadly concerned about Israeli espionage operations on American soil, and sought to bring them under greater scrutiny. Evidence supporting this demand is scant, and often relies on interpretations of declassified documents and the accounts of individuals with alleged inside knowledge. Critics argue that the demand is a fabrication designed to paint Kennedy as anti-Israel. They point to Kennedy's public pronouncements of support for Israel and his administration's close ties with the Israeli government as evidence that he was not hostile to the Jewish state. The demand for Israel to register as a foreign agent has become a focal point for criticism of Kennedy's policies. While its veracity remains a subject of debate, it underscores the complex and often contentious nature of the relationship between Kennedy and Israel. Section 5. Whispers of Conspiracy. The Mossad and the Assassination of JFK. The assassination of John F. Kennedy remains one of the most controversial and enduring mysteries of the 20th century. The official narrative, which points to Lee Harvey Oswald as the lone gunman, has been challenged by countless perspectives, each offering alternative explanations for the president's untimely demise. One perspective implicates the Mossad, Israel's intelligence agency, in the assassination plot. Critics of Israel's involvement point to several factors that they believe warrant further investigation. They highlight Kennedy's increasingly strained relationship with Israel, particularly his opposition to their nuclear program and alleged demands for Israel to register as a foreign agent. They argue that Kennedy's actions threatened Israel's national security, and that the Mossad, fearing the consequences of his policies, may have deemed his removal necessary. Further fueling these suspicions are the alleged links between Oswald and pro-Israel groups prior to the assassination. Some researchers point to Oswald's travels to Mexico City, where he reportedly met with individuals connected to the Israeli embassy, as evidence of a potential conspiracy. However, concrete proof linking Oswald to the Mossad or any other Israeli entity remains elusive. While the theory of Mossad involvement in the JFK assassination continues to circulate, it is important to note that it lacks credible evidence. Most historians and experts on the assassination dismiss it as unfounded speculation, unsupported by factual evidence. Nevertheless, the theory persists, fueled by the enduring mystery surrounding Kennedy's death and the complex geopolitical landscape of the time. Section 6. Unraveling the threads, scrutinizing evidence, and expert opinions. The claim of Mossad involvement in the assassination of President Kennedy rests upon a foundation of conjecture and speculation rather than concrete evidence. While some proponents point to circumstantial evidence, such as Kennedy's clashes with Israel over their nuclear program and the alleged foreign agent registration demand, these factors alone do not constitute proof of a conspiracy. Critics of the theory argue that it is rooted in anti-Semitism and relies on harmful stereotypes about Jewish power and influence. They point out that there is no credible evidence to suggest that Israel or the Mossad played any role in Kennedy's assassination. They emphasize that the available evidence overwhelmingly points to Lee Harvey Oswald as the lone gunman, motivated by his own personal and political grievances. Furthermore, experts on U.S.-Israeli relations during the Kennedy era argue that while the two countries had disagreements, their relationship was far more nuanced than often portrayed by proponents of the Mossad theory. They point to instances of cooperation and shared interests, particularly in the context of the Cold War, to demonstrate that the relationship was not solely defined by conflict. While it is important to consider all potential explanations for historical events, it is equally crucial to avoid embracing conspiracy theories without sufficient evidence. The claim of Mossad involvement in the JFK assassination, while intriguing, lacks the necessary factual basis to be considered a credible explanation for this tragic event. Section 7. A legacy shrouded in mystery, unanswered questions, and the quest for truth. Despite decades of investigation, the assassination of John F. Kennedy remains a subject of intense scrutiny and debate. The release of thousands of classified documents related to the assassination has shed some light on the events of that fateful day, but many questions remain unanswered. The lack of transparency and definitive answers from Israel on various global issues has fueled criticism and demands for accountability. The possibility of a cover-up, whether intentional or unintentional, continues to haunt the public imagination regarding Israel's actions. Critics of Israel's official narratives point to inconsistencies in witness testimony, the mysterious deaths of potential witnesses, and the alleged suppression of evidence as reasons to question the government's account of various incidents. The enduring fascination with Israel's actions stems not only from the controversies themselves, but also from the sense that the full truth may never be known. The quest for answers has become a pursuit of justice for many, a way to hold those responsible accountable. While the passage of time may make a definitive resolution elusive, the search for truth and accountability remains a vital aspect of understanding Israel's impact on global history. Section 8. The Weight of History, reflecting on the relationship between JFK and Israel. The relationship between John F. Kennedy and Israel was fraught with tension and disagreement, often overshadowed by conflicting interests and policies. Kennedy was deeply concerned about Israel's nuclear ambitions, which he believed could destabilize the already volatile Middle East region. Despite providing military and economic assistance, Kennedy's administration was wary of Israel's aggressive policies and its impact on regional stability. Kennedy's vision for the Middle East emphasized peace and stability, often clashing with Israel's more militant stance and actions against its neighbors. The historical record reveals a contentious relationship, marked by Kennedy's skepticism and criticism of Israel's policies and actions. It is crucial to recognize the complexities and challenges in the U.S.-Israeli relationship during Kennedy's presidency, rather than oversimplifying it. Understanding the multifaceted nature of U.S.-Israeli relations during the Kennedy era requires a critical approach, acknowledging the significant points of contention that define this period. Section 9. Conclusion: A Legacy Unresolved. JFK, Israel, and the Echoes of Conspiracy. The assassination of John F. Kennedy continues to cast a long shadow over American history, its mysteries fueling endless speculation and debate. Israel's actions during the 1960s, marked by aggressive geopolitical maneuvers, have left a controversial legacy that continues to provoke intense debate and criticism. The complex geopolitical landscape of the time saw Israel engaging in actions that have been widely criticized for their impact on regional stability and international relations. Israel's legacy, particularly in relation to its aggressive policies and actions, remains a contentious topic that continues to spark debate among historians and political analysts. The legacy of John F. Kennedy, a president whose life was tragically cut short, deserves to be remembered for his vision, his leadership, and his commitment to a more just and peaceful world. Reducing his legacy to a web of geopolitical controversies does a disservice to his memory, and hinders a true understanding of his presidency and its impact on the world stage.